There's this specific kind of person who keeps an extra $20 hidden somewhere in their wallet. Not because they're forgetful, not because they're disorganized, because some part of them, the part that grew up in the 1970s, still remembers what it felt like when there wasn't enough. And the wild thing? They're probably doing fine now, maybe better than fine, but they still turn off every light in a room they're leaving. They still feel vaguely guilty spending money on themselves. They still pause. Just for a second, before throwing away a rubber band. That's not a quirk. That's a decade talking. Here's what most people get wrong about the 1970s. It wasn't one dramatic crash. It wasn't a single moment of collapse you could point to and say, that's when everything went wrong. It was slower than that. Quieter. And in a lot of ways, more damaging. Gas lines that stretched around the block, inflation running so hot that your parents' grocery budget from January was useless by October. Factory towns that had hummed steadily for decades suddenly going silent. Interest rates that made buying a house feel like financial suicide. And over all of it, this low-grade hum of uncertainty that never really went away. If you were a child in that environment, you didn't experience it as economics. You experienced it as atmosphere. The tension at the dinner table when bills came up. The way your parents' voices changed when they talked about money. The specific feeling of wanting something at the store and already knowing before you even asked that the answer was no. That atmosphere didn't just pass through you, it settled in. And it shaped a set of money habits so consistent across this generation that once you see them, you can't unsee them. Go look at a 1970s kid's pantry. Go ahead. I'll wait. There's too much in there. Way too much. Canned goods stacked 3 deep. Enough pasta to survive a mild apocalypse. 4 bottles of dish soap when one would do. Ask them, why? And they'll say something practical. It was on sale. I don't want to run out. You never know. And all of that is technically true, but it's not the whole story. The whole story is that somewhere in their childhood, running out of something felt genuinely scary. Not inconvenient, scary. And the brain that learned to feel that fear never fully stopped preparing for it. It shows up beyond the pantry too. It's the emergency fund that goes well past what any financial advisor would recommend. It's the backup plan for the backup plan. It's the reason they can't fully relax even when, by every objective measure, they're secure. They're not anxious people. They're stocked people. There's a difference. One is a personality trait. The other is a survival strategy that outlived the emergency that created it. There is a 1970s kid somewhere right now driving a car with 200,000 miles on it. The AC is a little weak. One window doesn't roll down all the way. It makes a sound on cold. Mornings that probably means something, but it gets them where they need to go, so they're keeping it. Their friends are baffled, their kids are embarrassed, their mechanic has mixed feelings, but here's what looks like stubbornness from the outside. It's actually a deeply held philosophy. If something works, replacing it is waste. And waste, to someone who grew up watching their parents stretch every dollar until it nearly tore, feels almost immoral. This shows up everywhere. The couch that's been reupholstered twice instead of replaced. The phone that gets a new battery instead of an upgrade. The shoes resoled instead of retired. And the quiet punchline, this habit, the one that makes them seem cheap or stuck in the past, is a significant reason many of them built real financial stability. While everyone else was upgrading, they were saving the difference. Turns out, if it works, don't touch it is a surprisingly effective wealth-building strategy when you apply it for 40 years. Here's the contradiction that confuses people who know a 1970s kid. Well, this person who won't spend $15 on a nicer lunch for themselves will quietly drop $200 on a birthday gift for someone they love without blinking. They'll wear the same coat for a decade. They'll skip the vacation. They'll talk themselves out of the thing they actually want because it feels indulgent. But when it comes to the people around them, suddenly the budget has a lot more flexibility. The psychology here isn't complicated once you understand where it comes from. Spending on yourself, when you grew up with scarcity, carries this faint residue of guilt. Like you're being reckless. Like you're tempting fate. Like the universe is watching and will send a bill. But spending on people you love? That feels like protection. Like you're making sure they don't feel what you felt. Like you're using the resources you didn't have growing up to build a kind of safety net for everyone around you. It's generosity, yes. But underneath it, it's also memory. They're buying for others what they learned not to ask for themselves. You'd think unexpected money would feel good? A bonus? An inheritance? A refund bigger than expected. And on some level, it does. But watch a 1970s kid receive a windfall, and you'll notice something strange. They don't fully enjoy it. There's a pause. A guardedness. Almost a suspicion. Like the money came with terms and conditions they haven't read yet. This isn't irrational. It's pattern recognition from a decade where good economic news had a way of not lasting, where stability was always provisional, where the families that spent freely during the good months were the ones scrambling hardest when things turned. So the windfall goes straight to savings, or it pays off something that was already manageable, or it sits in an account while they think about it for 6 months. Not because they don't want nice things, because they've learned in a very deep place not to trust a calm sea. Here's what this generation doesn't get enough credit for. They can figure things out. Not in a flashy way. Not in a watch my YouTube tutorial way. In a quiet, unglamorous, roll up your sleeves way that produces results without requiring an audience. They learned to fix things because replacing them wasn't always an option. They learned to cook from scratch because convenience cost money. They learned to negotiate, to wait, to make do, to improvise. Not as lifestyle choices, but as necessary skills in a household where margins were thin. And those skills don't disappear when the margins widen. They just find new applications. The person who learned to fix a leaky faucet at 12 becomes the adult who doesn't panic when something breaks. The kid who learned to stretch a meal becomes the adult who can stretch a budget during a hard year without completely falling apart. Scarcity, when it doesn't break you, has a tendency to build a specific kind of competence that abundance rarely produces. The 1970s produced a lot of quietly competent people who never quite learned how to brag about it. So here's what all of these habits actually add up to. Not a generation of cheapskates or hoarders or people stuck in the past. A generation of adapters. People who learned very early that resources could disappear, that systems weren't always reliable, and that the safest thing you could do was take nothing for granted and waste absolutely nothing. The extra $20 in the wallet. The lights turned off. The rubber band saved. These aren't quirks. They're fossils. Preserved behaviors from a time when those small acts of carefulness genuinely mattered. And once you understand where they came from, they don't look strange at all. They look like exactly what they are, the money habits of people who paid very close attention to a very instructive decade. Your habits aren't random, they're responses. And the 1970s gave people a lot to respond to. If this resonated, whether you lived it or you recognize someone you love in it, drop a comment below. And if you want more of this kind of deep dive into the psychology behind how we handle money, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.